Next, we have Kuhn, who's going to present Allears, which is a name I love, Screenreader-Focused Immersive Websites. So take it away. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So this is Allears. This is a part of that was a part of my freelance web development practice, which is no longer a thing as I'm now a PhD student. So with that in mind, so I was really interested in ideas around an immersive web. And as I was working with immersive web as in a previous job, and as thinking about it as a freelancer, and I really wanted to get into this as a freelancer, like, well, how does immersive web work? And I was interested in A-Frame and React 3 Fiber, which is developed by this developer collective here. And I was working with it, and I was really interested, and I was interested in audio stuff, and then I found out that there's this huge gap in most of the immersive web, as we know it today, is just not really accessible to screen readers, and it's not given any sort of consideration at all. I think if I could summarize this slide, it's that all major 3D rendering engines assume that you have to see in order to traverse 3D space. And I think that's a wild assumption to make. You can, I think we all know that that's not true. There are some exceptions with Babylon.js, which has a page on how to navigate or how to add screen reader accessibility through alt text. But accessible and immersive is not alt text. We're looking for depth of experience, and that's kind of what I was what I'm trying to get at with this project. And I wanted to look at positional audio and ambisonics. And I am looking at mostly stereophonic listening, but at the same time, I'm not limiting navigation to, I'm not making you navigate based on positional hearing. It's all controller-based, it's keyboard-based, mobile phone-based, or a game controller. And I was working with the positional audio that's in 3GS, which is a three-dimensional JavaScript library. And ambisonics, using a JS ambisonics, which is a library developed at University of York. And working with both of those modes of spatial audio within 3D experiences to think about audio content and how to access that audio content from the perspective of someone who uses screen readers. And I was influenced by two major sort of branches. One is the lab that I'm currently with, Augmented Instruments Lab, and we've already had another presentation that kind of covered their work a bit, which is wonderful. And in the other parts are these queering practices and these cripping practices that look more at, okay, there are these systems that don't work for queer people. There are these systems that don't work for those who are disabled. And so how do you build systems that allow for creativity and not just allow them to sort of access it, but allows them to be developed by and for that community? And it kind of potentially exists outside of what we consider normal. And it kind of critically examines what is the idea of normal. And this paper in particular, called Careful Slugs, reimagines computer science as from the perspective of a slug, and it's really poetic and beautiful, and I really highly recommend you check this one out because it's a beautiful read. So I used funding through the DYCP Arts Council grant to do some development work, and I put out an open call, and I had 5 artists who use screen readers on a day-to-day basis to come to my studio, and we would work on some spatial audio controls, what would work for them. And so we worked with keyboard accessibility, a mobile phone with TalkBack on Android or VoiceOver on Mac. We worked with game controller, and we also worked with tablet and sort of seeing which works, which doesn't work, what controls are sort of preferable. And I commissioned a blind artist whose name is Andy Slater. He lives in Chicago. Wonderful guy to work with. And so I want to do a quick demo. Hopefully, I'm just doing good on time. So maybe not everyone has seen or heard the screen reader content before, but if I turn the screen reader on, it just cut off. It cut off. So it's reading out what's there down at the bottom. I'm not sure why that's happening. That's so silly.
Switch to your external headphones.
Yeah, that might be a better idea.
Can you reach?
So we're going to go with external headphones.
There we go.
Yeah.
Inside web content. To click this button, press Control Option.
Okay, so there's every website has HTML. It's the basic idea, and it just reads out what's happening in terms of HTML, and that's what happens in normal websites. So these are just buttons, right? And so if I navigate through them with the tab key, it just reads out what the button says. It says you are currently on a button, so stuff like that. So you don't really need a screen at all to be able to access the web, and which is a wonderful thing, and it's been around for a while. There's web accessibility standards that I'm taking use of. So how does this apply to a 3D space?
Continue. And one more item. Group. Play. This is all yours. A playful introduction to Screenreader accessible.
And so I've taken like HTML content, and I've linked it one-to-one with a HTML list, as if it's like a shopping list. And so I have like this linear experience here, and as you press tab key, as if you're like moving down a list, you jump in 3D space. And it's not, the audio right now is not interfacing with the screen reader audio, so they're not going at the same time. It's something I noticed a lot, is that if I had audio content and screen reader content at the same time, they were just very confusing and very like, it just wouldn't work well. But you can kind of just do this free explore. And I mean, like, everyone I worked with loved kind of just doing the free explore just to see where they would go and like fun. And if you wanted to go back, all you'd have to do is like press tab or wander back into this space, and it would just read out where you are, like in terms of 3D space. And you know, there's this element of fun, there's this element of play, and like, you know, you have to be a bit more. It's about the quality of interaction here. And I have some ambisonics as a demo here. And as you press tab key, you move to the next space, and then as you get to the end, it brings you to the menu automatically. And you can change all the settings and adjust your controllers after you've kind of gone through the basic experience. I'm going to turn off the screen reader. I encourage everyone to try this on mobile as well with screen reader on. It's a very interesting experience, swiping left and right through a website. It's very fun. So that's the QR code to the site if anyone wants to take a picture. Yeah, maybe I can like have this at the end as well. So I love the new movement in the 2020s with like you're thinking of the browser as like this multi-purpose tool, as like a gallery, an instrument, as a game engine, and it can be all of these things. And through this technology, there's a lot of things we could explore. We could like sharing musical experiences through a spatial web. You know, people, if you want to develop HTML websites and developing accessible ways of developing websites as well. And thinking about keyboard, touch, and gamepad controls to access this kind of like audio content. Thinking about nonlinearity in audio content. If you think about, you know, the 20 years ago, the choose your own adventure, HTML narratives. And this is another thing that you could explore with the possibilities with the web. And thinking about accessibility as more than just like the alt text. We want some richer, more sensory experiences. I'm coming from like an autistic background, and I'm very interested in these kinds of like sensory experiences and how can we make these sensory experiences more in depth. We're going to take Andy's piece, we're going to put it online, I'm going to release that. I want to release this to the community and just going to do some posts. I'd love to explore like a hackathon or a design challenge, and I'm very open to collaborations if anyone's interested. And in general, I want to imagine a internet future in which anyone can sort of create and share and work with content and be able to share content in ways that are meaningful and community building, and building on the ideas around dialogic design. So thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for June? No? Okay, well, I will ask a question then. I just want to clarify, so as far as I'm aware, and I think you said, screen readers, or there's kind of like a standardized language for how to navigate this. Is it fairly ubiquitous?
There's some weirdness, especially when it comes to mobile.
Okay.
So Android TalkBack and Mac VoiceOver operate very differently, but they kind of operate within the same HCI paradigms.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I was thinking about, like I had a conversation with John during the break about instead of, if we can switch out. Is that okay? Yeah. If we can, instead of thinking about, designing for accessibility as being like, oh, there's a problem, somebody can't visualize a space, so therefore we need to fix that, as a contrasting method could be actually thinking about what are some of the really useful aspects of,
should be fine, I reckon, yeah.
how people are operating, even with maybe having a different kind of need in that interaction. So I was curious, like, if you think that having some kind of a language around these key commands, or having some way to do that, could that be applicable to like wider interaction spaces beyond just web audio?
Absolutely. Web audio, so I think what web audio has in particular is that the screen reader technology has been around for a while, and there's actually been a lot of work, specifically originally at first through Microsoft and then through Apple, and it's very well developed, and there's just a lot of assumptions that are made and the standards that have been in place for a very long time, and that gives us a lot of building blocks for other things. And I think the web is just kind of becoming in a ubiquitous place for other things. It's like this joke in computer science about how you kind of learn JavaScript anyway, just because. So yes, it's kind of everything is moving to the web anyway. So
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Well, I've got two things, but I can one of them out afterwards. So I was for web, 3.0, moving to the web. But now I'm concerned that everything's moving to the web. It's got massive bit rates. We transfer, the complexity is increasing, and videos and images. So what's your kind of perspective on that? As we scale up and everything moves, kind of complicated websites are more and more. So there's a movement for reducing that digital degrowth, looking at less.
Well, if you're talking about like the things that Amazon and the FANG companies are doing versus like what the internet was before.
Yes.
There's kind of like a different. There's kind of like a difference there. Obviously, I don't think what FANG companies are doing are good. No. If that answers your question.
Yeah, well, we can talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
But because I don't think I expressed it quite. Yeah. Thanks.
Does anybody have any last questions for June? Yes.
It's interested, you talked about the standards for accessibility for access on websites, but I think that I just wondered if there was any best practice in terms of testing beyond. I think what I'm getting at is just building something to a set of rules is different from someone having the experience interacting with it, and maybe I don't even know how to ask the question properly. But if I build something to the standards, because I'm not used to using those accessibility features myself, there's perhaps nuance around usability, style, joy, all these kind of things. And I wondered if you had any sort of feedback on how to do it better.
Yeah, I think one thing I forgot to talk about was this was entirely guided by creative practice, and I wanted to sort of like entangle my motivations with the motivations of folks who just wanted access to things, or folks who wanted to create but didn't really have the means to, or however you want to word that. And like I wanted to build interesting like audio experiences, but I wanted to do it with people who had interesting perspectives on the topic. And I mean, working with the artists that I did, I have some new friends, and that's kind of the way I've been doing it, and that's the kind of way I would suggest other people. Just like.
All right, thanks again, June. It was a great presentation.